They say in the light of the Paris climate goals not being met, and this is experts saying this, not me, a failure to slow down the warming of the world, major issues then regarding clean energy. We're going to go straight into this debate with two major players who are at this week's Paris Peace Forum to give us more insight into what possibly could be the positive ways ahead. They are, by no order of preference, I'm just going to go first for Carol Koech. Good to see you. You're from the Global Energy Alliance and you're the Africa Vice President, as I understand it.
Correct.
Okay, good. That's a good start. On the other side is Agnes Dasewicz. Agnes is the Chief Investment and Programme Officer at the Global Energy Alliance. You're both at the Paris Peace Forum. Clearly, you've got a really important message to give. Agnes, can I bring you in first? With the experts saying that the 1.5-degree target Celsius is unlikely to be met, and that's compared to how the world was pre-industrial times. That's pre-1850. I thought it was pre-1750, but I'll go with what the experts are saying. We are in a difficult situation. How urgent do you think this situation is? Give us your take.
I think the situation is urgent, but I think there's a lot of positive news as well.
Okay.
For example, this year, we're in a pivotal moment where renewable production surpassed production of energy from fossil fuels. Renewables are now 90%. 90% of renewables are actually cheaper than fossil fuels. So what we're seeing, even though the goals are not being met, countries and communities are actually choosing renewables and choosing that production of energy to power their economic growth.
So there are reasons to be cheerful. Let's bring Carol in to talk about Africa, because when they say that when the US sneezes, Europe gets a cold, but when the world has a problem, it always seems to impact Africa the most. And in terms of what this energy issue is and the issue of global warming too, it must be a more amplified problem for Africans.
I think the good news is that Africa today holds a very large portion of the renewable power potential. Personally, I have grown up in Kenya without electricity, but I'm glad to say that I've spent the last 20 years plus trying to solve this problem. And even though we still have 600 million people in Africa without electricity access, there's a massive focus to reduce that number through the Mission 300 program, which is being led by the World Bank and Africa Development Bank. And the Global Energy Alliance is one of the supporting partners to that. And there's a lot of focus to try and power as many Africans as possible.
So getting that electricity to more countries in Africa is a very big issue. Is this something that, Agnes, can I just put this to you, is it something that will be actually sort of an African issue, an African problem, if you like? Or is it something that you can see other global partners coming in and helping? How will that work?
I think this is not just an Africa problem and an Africa opportunity. I think this is a global issue and a global opportunity. Energy really is the engine for economic growth and for jobs. This year alone, or over the next decade, 1 billion young people will enter the workforce. And the projection currently is that only about 30% of them will find jobs. So we really need to enable countries to use energy and renewable energy to create economic growth, because energy powers small businesses. It powers productive use equipment, for example, refrigeration, cooling stations, small rice mills that people are really using to earn incomes and create jobs. So it's not just about making sure that the energy is there and the connections are there. It's also about how does that energy power jobs that are in incredible demand by the new youth population that's really coming.
Which is absolutely immense, Agnes, isn't it, the whole concept?
Yes.
But coming back to specific African problems, and I think, Carol, you mentioned the numbers. 14 countries with less than 50% electricity coverage, South Sudan 5%, Burundi 11%, Chad 12%. You mentioned your own childhood in Kenya, growing up with no electricity. Where does that get solved? How does it get solved? I'll put it to you, is it a government issue? Is it something that communities can be working on? How does that problem get solved?
I think this is a problem that requires all hands on deck. It is a public-private philanthropic partnership opportunity, because the problem is so big that it cannot be solved by one party. And I think if you look at how the Mission 300 program is structured, It's being led by the two banks. It's governments driving it. It's philanthropies coming in to provide some catalytic support. And it's private sector running the programs and deploying the projects on ground. So collectively, everybody's solving this problem. So the way I see it is everybody's problem.
It's everybody's problem.
Yeah.
But someone somewhere has to provide the money to make this work. Is that where you come into it, Agnes?
Yes, so
Do you have a big checkbook? That's my basic question.
well, what I can say, what we do have, is we have amazing partners.
Okay.
So not only do we have philanthropic partners, we also have partners, like I said, in local governments, and we have partners in local communities. So let me share a story of a business that we're supporting in Haiti, where, as you know, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of uncertainty in Haiti. But we are helping, we're funding a small business that is installing solar panels in the communities in Haiti. And as they were delivering these solar panels, they were stopped by a gang, and the whole truck with the solar panels on it was stolen. And then it was returned 2 hours later. And when they asked why they were returning it, the person said, "Oh, my grandmother told me that I have to return these because these are going to be powering my village." So you really need to bring everyone on board. You need to bring communities. You need to bring philanthropy. You need to bring the local governments. You need to bring the private sector, because this is the time for alliances, and this is the time for really a coalition, because I don't think it's just a challenge. I really think it's a huge opportunity to use renewables to help local communities and drive economic growth.
That is a beautiful story about the grandmother making the gang give back the truck with the solar panels. Absolutely fantastic. Can I just, both of you answer this question. When you have someone like Donald Trump who says that he doubts, well, doesn't say he doubts that climate change exists, he says it doesn't exist. He says it's absolute nonsense. Where does that leave your arguments? Because clearly clean energy is vital because of the issue of global warming. So when you have Donald Trump saying what he says and others who will echo that, how does that leave you feeling, Carol, first, and then Agnes?
You know, when I speak from an African perspective, Africa requires access. And what they have available and affordable today is clean energy. So, and they don't have enough resources to spend on anything else. They will spend the limited resources to power their people using the most available and affordable technologies. I think that really is an easy decision for many governments to make in Africa.
Okay, so not answering the question on Trump, but I hear what you're saying. Agnes, I'll put the same question to you. When Donald Trump says it's a hoax, how do you feel?
I really think that the countries are making their own choices. So once again, I feel that they make their own decisions. And as Carol said, renewables are often the decisions that they make because it's cheaper. So for example, in places like Kenya and places like Brazil, if you have a diesel generator or a kerosene power source, that is usually more expensive for you than a solar panel powered one. So you will just make that choice. It's pure economics. It's energy security for these countries. If you do not have fossil fuels in your country, you don't want to be dependent on imports. So I feel that independent of what anyone really says, the countries are choosing renewables, and we could see it.
Agnes, thank you for being with us. That's Agnes Dasewicz and Carol Koech from the Global Energy Alliance, giving us that take on why clean, green energy is necessary in a world which is getting hotter and hotter. Thank you both for coming in. It's much appreciated. And continue your good work at the Paris Peace Forum. I'm sure and I hope it's going very well for you both. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.